my mic. Again, thank you, everybody. Now we're starting at 12:06. Mission, we believe that arts drive a more vibrant and equitable community. We strive to ensure that all Nashvillians have access to a creative life through community investments, artist and organizational training, public art, and creative placemaking, coordination, and direct programs that involve residents in all forms of arts and culture. Okay. Moving forward, pursuant to the provisions of 2.68.030 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, please take notice that decisions of the Arts Commission may be appealed to the Chancery Court of Davidson County for review under a common law writ of certiorari. Any appeal must be filed within 60 days after entry of a final decision by this commission. Any person or other entity considering an appeal should consult with an attorney to ensure that time and procedural requirements are met. Okay, again, thank you, everyone. Let's see, we do have a quorum, but Vivian, I will ask that you take our roll call, please.
All right, right before I take roll call, I just want to let you know, if you can speak into the mic, it will not be amplified. You're typically used to hearing it amplified, but just try to speak into the mic as close and clear as possible for me. All right, we'll get started on that roll call. Commissioner West.
Present.
Commissioner Harding.
Present.
Commissioner Lefkowitz.
Present.
Commissioner Brown. Present. Commissioner Cole. Commissioner Jester.
Present.
Commissioner Khalil.
Present.
Commissioner Knight.
Present.
Commissioner Wade.
Present.
Commissioner Yu. And Commissioner Greer.
Thank you, Vivian.
You're welcome.
And we can now move to our land acknowledgement. Metro Arts stands and holds space on the unceded and sovereign lands of the Cherokee East, Yuchi, and Shawnee peoples who have stewarded it for generations. Every community owes its existence and vitality to generations from around the world who contributed their energy to making the history that led to this moment. Some were brought here against their will. Some were drawn to leave their distant homes in the hope of a better life. And some have lived on this land for more generations than can be counted. We acknowledge we are all standing on ancestral lands, and we honor the thousands of enslaved African peoples whose lives were physically and spiritually stolen. We pay respects to elders past and present. Metro Arts invites you to join in our commitment to knowing our Native communities in more meaningful ways in alignment with our restorative arts practice. And again, thank you everyone for being here. And now I will ask if there is any public comment submitted prior to or in person.
Yes, we had one public comment submitted prior to this meeting, and then we do have 3 public comments today in person. When I call your name, if you can, please go to the podium. You will have 2 minutes. I will let you know when we are at the 1-minute marker. Can we have Miss Princella Smith to the mic, please?
I assume it's this one?
It is.
Okay.
All right, and you don't have to touch the mic. It's already on, and I'll let you know when your time starts, and your time starts now.
Good afternoon. Commissioner West, I don't think I've met you before. Did we?
We met a couple of years ago, I believe, at an Apple meeting. Yeah, exactly. And I know all about your film, super fan. Yeah, thank you.
So cool.
Yeah.
What I also think is cool is that you read a statement about the land that you're on. You mentioned a little known tribe named Yuchi. Okay. My movie, for which I was delayed a grant and then finally got it last year. Some of you, oh, my bad. I got a big mouth though. I think they heard me. My movie, it was denied. Well, it was accepted for a grant. You remember the whole fiasco last year, and then we had to wait, and so it delayed my production of the movie. And then, but I did finish the movie, and now I'm in marketing. I applied for a grant, and I'm literally here today because I need to know why I'm not on the recommended list. But I thought it was interesting that you read that. I've never heard that statement read before, because Yuchi is the tribe of my main character, Raymond Washburn, a blind man who led 5 people out of the rubble of the Oklahoma City bombing. I've created 2 books, a hardback and a paperback. I'm an NAACP Image Award nominee. I did all this on a shoestring budget. I placed in numerous festivals, including the International Black Film Festival here. I'm standing here with Nan Smith, real sweet old lady. We are not related, even though we got the same last name, but she has been a huge financial contributor to my project. She can attest for how hard I've worked and how my project fixed everything that has been listed and stated, but I don't understand why I am not on that approved list. So I just came here to wonder why there was no transparency. We don't know how these selections were made, but I will put my application, my project, and my work next to any individual artist who applied. And I'm not trying to shade anybody, but Princella Smith should be on that list.
One minute.
I've never known anyone as hardworking as Princella. I support her.
Hold on a second. She did say Tom. She is on the list, but she's third.
Okay.
Who's second? You don't mind letting her know?
Isabella.
Can she second? Thank you.
Okay. So 1 second. I'm going to start the time over, and your time starts now.
I've never known anyone as dedicated to a cause as Princella Smith. That's why I've given her tens of thousands of dollars, because I believe in her cause, what she's doing, taking this man. And she told him before he died, your story will be told. She spoke at his funeral. Oklahoma declared Raymond Washburn Day because of her. The newscaster said, we've never heard of this guy, but he saved 5 people, and that's what this story is about, that whole thing. And she's already Oscar qualified. She just depends on this and this and this to make this next step. And I knew the Frist family. My husband worked with Dr. Frist, both the Frist, and they were the most compassionate people you'd ever meet, and they would have liked nothing more than for money to have gone to someone like Princella, who has put her heart into this project.
1 minute.
UGs are literally in like 2 states, Tennessee and Oklahoma. I'm gonna say this one more time. This is probably the most famous UG, and I am not on that list. I need somebody to tell me something.
In the
She spoke
microphone.
at their funeral.
That's it.
Thank you both so very much for being here. And we cannot directly reply to public comment, but I want to thank you both for making the time to be here. Thank you.
Next we have Miss Isabella Tipton Crispin. And your time starts now.
Hi, everyone. My name is Isabel Tipton Crispin, and I am the executive director of the Nashville Shakespeare Festival. 2 days ago, I learned from a link in a Metro Arts newsletter that NSF was not recommended for grant funding this fiscal year. I actually initially thought I was misreading it or it might be a mistake, but I called Metro Arts and they confirmed that we were not on the list. Last year, our organization received a score of 86 on the current rubric. This year, with the same rubric and the same grant writer, our score dropped to an unexpected 60. A 26-point decrease in a single cycle does not seem normal. Since learning this news, it has raised some major questions about the scoring process. I'm here to seek clarity on the following questions. How were the grant panelists trained? I learned from Director Batchelder that there were only 3 people who scored each organization. In most funding processes, that's usually considered unusually small because of one person's bias or misunderstanding can usually drastically skew a result. Why was there no session where panelists could ask questions or clarify misunderstandings of the applicants? This is typical in most grant programs and used to be the norm at Metro Arts. The fact that the basic best practices for arts grants were not implemented, especially during a year of historic application highs, is troubling. For Nashville Shakespeare Festival, the result is incredibly destabilizing. In the past year, my organization employed more than 85 Nashville artists, technicians, and staff. Our most recent summer production reached over 5,300 Nashvillians through Pay What You Will model, and the average donation per person was $6. Dozens of local artists rely on us for contracts that help them make a living. Our funding has gone from $117,000 to $38,000 to $0 in a 2-year span, and we are an $815,000 organization. What am I supposed to tell these artists if we get yet another cut from an institutional funder? It's my understanding that you may not have received a list of who didn't get funded. I urge you to ask for one. In order to build trust within the Nashville arts community, the main issue lies with those who do not receive funding, not the ones who do. Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes our public comment section.
Thank you all. Okay, moving forward into our featured artist for today. Chuck, are you introducing Devin? Excellent, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Our featured artist today is Devin Kern. Devin is a multidisciplinary artist who has been based in East Nashville since 2018. From fortune-telling machines to writing choose-your-own-adventure zines, one of his favorite themes to explore is choice, so that the audience can choose how to experience the art and make the work more personable. His primary creative role is to support and help host Creative Mornings Nashville, a free monthly breakfast lecture series that takes place in over 200 cities across 70 different countries. His wife is the primary leader and host, where on the last Friday of each month, tomorrow, there is a different speaker from the creative community of Nashville to discuss a topic that promotes inspiration, discussion, and connectivity between creatives. He's been supporting Creative Mornings for the past several years, and he hopes to see you at the next one by following at Nashville_CM on Instagram. He was also he'll mention this, but a recent Thrive panelist. Yeah, please give a warm welcome to our guest, Devin Kern.
Thank you, everybody. Good afternoon. It's an honor to be here. I was very grateful to be asked and to also experience the Thrive grant process. And so without further ado, I'd like to focus on allowing art, the connection between criticism and collaboration. So a bit more about me. As Chuck said, multidisciplinary artist, which is everyone's favorite fancy way of saying I make art any way that I can. I got to be a panelist for the most recent round of the Thrive grant, which was a big inspiration for my talk today. And my primary creative role is through Creative Mornings, which we'll talk more about a bit later. But time to thrive. First, I'd love to talk about my Thrive grant experience, since it was my first time ever being a panelist, and it was very good. I met other folks in Nashville's art scene. I believe that they said our panel was one of the more talkative bunch, so that was very fun. The process went smoothly, and I learned about exciting new projects coming to the area. As a panelist, I took the role of judging and approving these grant proposals very seriously, which led me to asking myself, am I being too critical? What is too critical? It's a great question, and not just for the art world, but every day. Often criticism is considered negative, but it really shouldn't be. Let's start by digging into the definition of critical. Expressing or involving an analysis of the merits and faults of a work of literature, music, or art. The key word here is merits. How do we determine merits? By establishing a criteria. Criticism needs criteria. Criteria is the merit by which one can be critical. How does it measure up to the established criteria? It isn't useful to be critical about something without a criteria. Otherwise, your opinions are unfounded. Like saying, I just don't like it, I don't know, is sharing a personal opinion and not exactly helpful. By being critical of the grant proposals through the lens of the grant's criteria, I was able to determine which had a greater focus on cultural impact and community involvement. Those were the primary criteria that I was judging on through these grant proposals. But most importantly, always be constructive with your criticism. Being negative without providing reasoning or a solution doesn't help anybody move forward. Through my whole review process, I focused giving more feedback on the things that needed more fleshing out, or it was, needed greater detail or understanding. And rather than the ones that were, very good, I could say they're great on their own merits, but it's those ones of giving criticism to help build it back up. That's what's more important, because constructive criticism isn't about tearing down art. It's about building art up with an added perspective. Criticism only works in collaboration. Artists will always be critical. It should come as no surprise that I can be very critical. However, I love hearing criticism about myself. Give me the feedback, give me the reviews, because collaborating with other artists helps bring out the best constructive criticism. Too often, artists feel like they need to be solitary or closed off to finish their work. This can surprisingly stunt the creative process and create an echo chamber. Constructive criticism helps reflect the art back to the artists so they can perceive their work outside of a vacuum. Obviously, this feedback should be supportive of whatever criteria the artist has to completing their own work. You have to share your work to get criticism and therefore find guidance and/or validation with what you are creating. Collaboration is key. And speaking of collaboration, shameless self-promo time. Yes, you can collaborate with Nashville's creative community at Creative Mornings. There, since we all know, collaboration is so important, we would love to see you there. There is a vast creative community in Nashville. Many artists feel disconnected from the greater Nashville community. Creative Mornings collaborates with artists from all disciplines and backgrounds and to inspire and connect with other creatives. As you can see from this photo of our end of the year gathering, Creative Mornings slogan is that everyone is creative and everyone is welcome. That is the criteria for Creative Mornings. It would probably help if I explained more of what Creative Mornings is. As mentioned, it is a breakfast lecture series. It happens the last Friday of every month, usually at Center 615, located in East Nashville. It is a global organization across 200 cities in 70 different countries for free. Anybody can attend. We have a new theme that goes to all the cities, and each city has their own local artist and creative speak on that theme. Moving through this rundown, I'll focus that the content of our mornings vary drastically. They could be anything from an improv class to pottery to a simple writing prompt and things like that. It's always very, very worthwhile to attend. And with that, I ask that you share Creative Mornings with your community. You might be asking when the next Creative Mornings is, and it's actually tomorrow. So this worked out very well. It is at Center 615. The doors are at 8:30, and you've got time to mingle and have some free breakfast, meet some other creatives, and get to know folks. The talk starts at 9 a.m. where Emily Maines, the writing and improv creative behind their recent Kindling Arts production, Bess Has Never Had an Orgasm, will talk on the theme of Blossom. Please follow us on Instagram at Nashville_CM for details. If you have any questions, come see me after this event. And lastly, thank you all very much for listening. Yes.
Thank you so much, Devin. Really appreciate that, and encourage everyone to, when you can, to attend Creative Mornings. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Studio 615 in East, right? It's Center 615 in East. Awesome. Thank you all. Okay, let's move on to item D, approval of minutes. You all have received the minutes in your packet in advance, so I hope you've taken a minute to look at them. And if you have any edits or changes, now is the time to let us know. And otherwise, we can take a motion to approve as is or with any changes.
I make a motion to approve the minutes as is from the meeting on August 28th.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Khalil, for your first, and then second, Commissioner
Jester, seconds.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. The minutes pass. Okay, we are moving into action items, which begins with the Public Art Committee, of which I'm chair. And we are welcoming Attilio to, are you going to be over there, or do you want to be over here? Okay, okay, great. I'm not going to steal your thunder, but I am going to say that thank you, Attilio, for all your hard work on the NYCE panel, for all the work that you're doing, the whole public art team, which is down a manager, down another staff member. And so just thank you. Just so everybody knows, I did chair the panel for this this round, and we have the final artist recommendation to bring to you all today. So with that, Attilio.
Great, thank you. Can you go into the next slide? Who has a slide? Okay, great, thank you. All right, I just want to give a quick reminder of where the project started and what were some of the deliverables here. So we had an open call. The eligibility was a national call, so anybody within the United States was able to apply. We were looking for either an artist or an artist team, and the objective was to commission an artist that would work on a wall-mounted sculpture. The estimated size is roughly around 1,300 cubic square feet, and it will be featured at the Nashville Youth Campus for Empowerment entrance lobby. It's a fantastic space if you haven't seen any of the drawings, but what's unique about this particular space is that it's literally sandwiched between and surrounded by glass, so a lot of natural light will be entering in there. And As you can see, this looks like the entrance, but this is the first impression that of the building individuals are walking into are going to see and look at. So there's a really, really huge emphasis, right, that we need to get this right. Another thing that's very unique about this particular project is that it's in an accelerated timeline. So we needed somebody who could really, really come in, know how to communicate with the community, connect with them, and then also work with them on developing an amazing artwork that is representative of the community and the objectives of JJC. With that being said, our partners obviously are JJC and also General Services. A huge shout out to Judge Sheila Calloway and Lionel Matthews. It was imperative how much they were involved in this process, and then giving us time to the point where they were able to meet with the semifinalists and conduct a community engagement with them, so they could really, really be well informed in when they got into the interview stage. And that was 5 artists. With all that being said, and to close off, just a quick reminder, right, that the commission was for $400,000. So there's a lot at stake, not necessarily because of the commission size, but just at the fact that for Judge Sheila Calloway, this has been 12 years or more in the making, right? And so the amount of detail and passion, I think that everybody's come together, not necessarily just with Metro Arts, but all the other partners that have been working with her. We're really, really want to make this right and, hit a grand slam. And so with that being said, I want to talk a little bit about our panel. Our panel was fantastic. We went through 3 rounds, and they are probably the most inquisitive, more thoughtful panel that I've ever had. No shade on anybody else who has ever participated in our panel before, but we had community leaders, we had an architect, we had project managers, we had artists, and the amount of passion and detail they had in terms of when they had questions with Judge Sheila Calloway and Lionel Matthews, just to understand really what the facility is going to encompass and what it's going to mean, was amazing. And so I think they really, really took the time to not only do the research while they were in the panel themselves, but in the panel itself, but outside, they really, really took the time to really look at, okay, who are these artists that are applying, right? And who is it that we're going to interview, and what's the mission, and what are the goals? And I couldn't be more happy on the results. So with that being said, if I could go into the next slide, please. The artist that was selected was William Denton Massey. He is currently in North Carolina, formerly in Atlanta, Georgia. As you can see, his medium is, I would say, mixed, but at the same time, what's very unique is that it's repurposed materials. That's something that it's one of his strong suits, right? However, going through, and if you could just go through some of the other slides, please, back and forth a little bit, so you could get a taste of what he does. However, one of the unique things I think about him that came through his references, because I was able to speak to a lot of the references, well, all of the references, artist references, is that he has a huge community engagement background. He currently still works for a nonprofit in Atlanta called Re-Emerge. And he started off as a volunteer as doing community engagement, later went on into part-time, and then became so ingrained into this organization that he recently moved, and they had to come up with an agreement on how they can keep him, because he was so connected to the community. And they serve the entire Atlanta, Metropolitan. I don't know their county name, but yeah, that's one thing that really, really stuck out to me. And I think that's something that really, really stuck out during his interview and resonated with the panelist. He's had a very challenging life as a young adult, or as a teenager, young adult, and then coming into being an adult, which I think will resonate with a lot of the individuals that are using this facility. And I think that's another thing that was very, very, that captured and hooked. That's the best word I could come up with, because he hooked me. hooked the panel in terms of, you know, his artwork and what his labor of love in terms of repurposing materials and to create something beautiful. As one of his references stated, you know, he finds things that are discarded, things that are broken. And I almost feel like, and I don't want to speak for him, but my impression that I got from him in his interview and from his references were that because he's had such a difficult life, right? You could say that he was broken, and then he finds a way to bring things together to even show that even when you're broken, you're still beautiful and you could still create something amazing. And so, with all that being said, I cannot tell you how excited I am about this selection, what this will mean to not only JGC but to also Nashville. Yeah, I hope to, you know, hopefully y'all can give me a good approval here so we could hit the ground running, and then I can notify them and get contract going and get in community engagements as soon as possible.
First, thank you, Tilio. This has gone to PAC. We had our PAC meeting last week, so we had Evan was there, Commissioner Brown and Commissioner Khalil both were there. As I said, I did chair the committee, and I would like to say that a lot of what informs NYC is trauma-informed design. And all 5 of the finalists did understand that, but I believe that William understood it to an extent that he can take it in and then purge it out with the community engagement, and work well with the confines of the time. And we did an in-person Zoom with him, and just keep in mind that this is a trauma-informed facility. This is one of a kind, and I really think that we came up with a really great finalist on this one. So any questions or discussion for Attilio, for me, for the packet in general?
No, I just want to say very excited about this project as well. Tilio, great job on this one. Looking forward to what is produced and that comes forward with this artist. And so in the PAC meeting, we had a great conversation about this artist and what he can bring forth to this location. So very excited about it as well.
And I guess one other thing I'd just like to say, structurally, he also very much understood how to work with the contractors and everything else. We have, you know, it's 100 pounds per stud, so to speak. So he understands all the things that go into the architecture, the design, and how to kind of pivot. So if there are no other questions, I would like to if you could take me back to the motion.
There you
we
go.
are, the
Thank you.
recommendation. The PAC recommends approval of William Denton Massey as the finalist artist for the Nashville Youth Campus for Empowerment Public Art Project. Any questions and discussion? Okay.
I make a motion that we approve William Denton Massey for the Nashville Youth Empowerment Campus Public Art.
Thank you, Commissioner Hargan.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Lefkowitz. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you so much, Attilio.
Thank you. One other note, when community engagement comes around and planning, we will be bringing that to you. So if any of you want to participate and really be involved, I would really appreciate that as well, too. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other PAC news, Arthur Avenue underpass, the lighting is underway, and Leslie has been working diligently on that. And other projects that are still going on, Bordeaux Gateway, Old Hickory Community Center, Strobel House, others. So you can always find those updates with staff or on our website.
Can I?
Lefkowitz?
I want to say I came to the Bordeaux Gateway public or community meeting, and I just want to say to commissioners and everyone how great that was. Commissioner Khalil was there. Staff did a great job of setting it up, and it was so wonderful. I learned a lot, and it was a really cool event. So when we have those community events around public art, I'm going to try and attend in the future. I just thought I learned so much. So.
Moving right along into item number 2, action item, which is nominating committee 2025-26 slate of officers. And the chair of that committee is Commissioner Jester.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So as I mentioned in our last
Metro Arts meeting, this committee was going to wait to make a recommendation about who nominees until after we had a chance for all of the commissioners to potentially raise their hand if they were interested in serving in a leadership capacity. We did not receive any additional interest. So with that, at our last meeting, we made a recommendation to nominate Commissioner Campbell West as chair, Commissioner Trey Harden as vice chair, and Commissioner Heather Lefkowitz as the secretary again for this next year. So with that,
Commissioner Jester, thank you. Any questions and discussion? With that, I can take a motion.
So I'll go ahead and make a motion to recommend that we nominate Commissioner Campbell West as chair, Commissioner Trey Harden as vice chair, and Commissioner Heather Lefkowitz as secretary for the upcoming Metro Arts year.
Seconded by Commissioner Wade. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much. The motion's approved. And on that, the committees will stay as they are until January 1st. And that's when since we three are in the same roles, we'll just be moving into the new roles on November 1st. Okay. Ashley, are we ready to move into item 3? For Grants and Funding Committee?
Okay, I'm gonna start before Ashley gets us into the.
Thank you, Commissioner Lefkowitz.
Oh, thank you. I want to start with gratitude. Gratitude for all the people who came today and people who've emailed and reached out to us. I want to express gratitude to the Grants Committee. We had a great meeting on Monday, and that was wonderful. I want to express gratitude to the staff who really did a beautiful job of implementing the policy that we as a commission set and that kind of process. Just gratitude for everyone who's involved in this process. As kind of a way to think about the framing of this discussion, I wanted to share something that I tell my students a little bit. Maybe they're watching because I use this thing called Venn diagrams. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but a Venn diagram is not a Venn diagram, but it looks like one. And a Venn diagram is when you have two things that seem contradictory or opposite, but that are both true, right? And then the discussion kind of happens in the intersection of that. And so when we're talking about complex issues, sometimes I feel like, we need to figure out a way to talk about them, and sometimes just an acknowledgement that these two things can be true at the same time, and we can talk about kind of the middle. So here is an example of some Venn diagrams for our grants process. So for example, we knew because we did so much community outreach and we had such a large number of applicants, we knew that not everyone would be funded this year, right? And likely. And we talked about that, and that is true. What is also true is we want to be sure that the policy we created is solid and fair and equitable and the best it can be. One thing that is true is the staff, as I said, did an amazing job of implementing this policy that this commission set and setting a process and creating these outcomes, and that is completely true. Another thing that is true, which was indicated in the memo that you received from Director Batchelder about the limitations of the process. We are working under significant limitations that are inherited and that are just part of the process. And so both of those things, right, can be true, and we have to figure out something in the middle. We have a long list of process improvements that we want to make. Like, we want to look at the entire system, and we have a huge parking lot, if you will, of things and policies we want to think about. And what is also true is that all of our community feedback said that what people wanted this year was for us to move forward in the best way we could and get the money, right, to the artists and the organizations. So we knew we couldn't do everything, and we made decisions, right, about policies and things that we could implement to try to get money to people this year, so that we can get back on a cycle that is both something that organizations and artists can understand and have kind of implemented, and that we as a committee and as a commission also have a process which is standardized. We have not had that in several years. So as we talk about all of these things, I just ask that you maybe think about that. We are bringing recommendations to you from our grants committee. We had a great meeting on Monday in which we did actually a lot of work. We had work and discussions about things. That is where, that is the purpose of those committees, right? For us to work these things out. So today you could decide, there are many different options in terms of what you can decide. You can decide to adopt our recommendations. You can decide to adopt our recommendations with modifications. You can send it back to our committee, right? To do more work. To do the policy work and talking. All of those things are true. But I want to say that that is the responsibility of us as commissioners to set the policy which the staff has worked so hard, right, to implement. And they've done it beautifully under a lot of constraints. So I hope that is clear, and I hope that provides kind of a frame. I just want to open it up as we start talking about this and remind you that that we have different options as a commission, and to thank you for being here and for having this conversation. So I think we can move now into some of the action items that we have. And the first piece, though, we wanted to talk about was conflicts of interest, which is, of course, very important. And thanks to those of you who submitted your conflict of interest form. And so Ashley, would you lead us through that? Because that is not an action item, that's just a thing.
Yeah, so I have a few slides. I asked legal Macy to just give us a reminder. We had a reminder, helpful reminder in Monday on committee, and I know that this, I believe, is the first time that we've done this for a few of our new commissioners. So we've got a few simple slides on the screen, and I'm just going to ask Macy to give a brief.
Sure. So the gist is that you have a duty to act independently, so you should not be voting on something. Oh, sorry. You should not be voting on something if you have a financial interest in someone who is due to be funded, or someone in your immediate family also has a financial interest. You need to be impartial. If you have a bias for or against a grantee, you should be recusing yourself. That's the gist. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them now. I think most of you have already submitted your conflicts.
Yeah, so we sent the lengthy conflict of interest form online. Thank you, everybody who is here. You have all submitted it. I have printed copies of what you submitted. If you have questions about whether you may have a conflict that you wanted to ask today, and if you want to make edits to what you submitted, I can give this back to you. Right now, we have taken all the information that you submitted in this form, and I have it, but this is the opportunity if you want to look at the lists again and ask any questions. Does anybody want their paper copy back to make any edits to what you submitted online?
Yeah, not necessarily that I want it back at the moment, but if we get into this discussion and I may need to change it at any time, is that possible?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, it would be great to have. Thank you.
And you'll see that I've circled the ones that I've circled, I've got documented over here for when we get into the process. So if you've noticed any that I have not circled, you can draw my attention to that once we get into process. So if there's no questions about conflicts, we can click a couple of slides forward here to one more. So
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Just a reminder, in the event we have a conflict, we're not abstaining, we're just not participating, is that?
So I have instructions on the process that we'll use. The conflicts and abstentions come in when we are authorizing the specific grantees. So when we're having policy decisions about our grant guidelines, which is the first action here, policy decision, we don't bring that in right now. So it's for the action items approving the specific grantees. So I'll keep going a little bit. Go. Yeah. No, leave it on the red slide, just for a minute. Yeah. So there's three sort of big picture action items that we may consider today. So first is allocating what we're allocating to our general operating support applications and what we're allocating to our Thrive applications, and then we'll take up specific approvals for Thrive applicants and specific approvals for general operating applicants. And we can have discussions about all three of these different action items. Commissioner Lefkowitz mentioned a lot of helpful information, and I just want to reference what is in your packet as supporting materials for this conversation as well. So one of the things that you have in there is the memo that's dated September the 8th that I sent a few weeks ago. And it really touches on a lot of the things that Commissioner already noted. So the things that we've brought here today, the package that we've put together is the process that we developed and implemented based on the policies that we approved in June, I believe it was, that this body approved in June. And the conversations that we've been having in grants committee and through one-on-one conversations that I've had with many of you, we've talked about the challenging position that we're in, and the memo tried to frame some of that. And so just a couple things that I wanted to highlight so you understand sort of the process of where we came to. As described here, is that we've been really truly working to catch up 3 different grant cycles, to be catching up from before, to be walking forward on the cycle we are, and to be preparing for what we're going to do next. And so this has just been very challenging with capacity to process and implement these grant cycles with the volume of grantees that we serve, with the huge growth that Metro Arts took on in the number of grantees over the last 2 years. So capacity to administer and process all of this while also dedicating time for the research that is needed to update and redesign part of our programs. And so the memo goes on to describe the limitations of the policies and the processes that we all know exist. So I've noted in the memo things in our operating formula, things in our Thrive formula, and in the processes that are all based on this policy that leads to these outcomes that we have here. So I'm not going to go through this because you've had it for a couple of weeks, and so I know some of you have reached out for discussion around it, but just want to make sure that any sort of big picture questions that feel important to ask, we have space for that as well. But with that, the first policy decision that we have to make is about our allocation between general operating and Thrive. And so in this memo, again, from September the 8th, you can go to the next slide. We shared that at that time it was a preliminary staff recommendation that became the staff recommendation, which has since now become the committee recommendation as well, to have a 60-40 split between 60% of our budget to general operating support grants and 40% to Thrive. This maintains our commitment to supporting the Thrive program at much larger numbers than it has been in the first several years of its 11 or 12 years of existence here. And what the image on the slide shows is just that growth over the last few years. So in FY23, Thrive was, I believe that's 6%. When we moved into FY24, the prevailing vote that we had that year, I believe that was 21% to Thrive. And then the commission for FY25 allocated 40% to Thrive for last year. I am recommending, and the committee has recommended, that we maintain that 60-40 split. The important thing to think about as well is how our allocations impact the volume of grantees that we have and the capacity for administrative tasks associated with the number of grantees, as well as just the check-ins, the relational components of increasing our grantee pool, and the ability that we have on the staff side to support that. I believe you all are aware that we are very short-staffed in our grants area specifically, without a grants manager right now, and we will be more staffed come the spring, come the new year, but that is the position that we are in right now. And so in the memo, I also note on page 4 that we do have plans for grant check-ins, as well as implementing the audits that we are required to do, both in the internal audit report, as well as just a general best practice that we should be doing for our grant cycles anyway. And so with all that to say, we believe that this allocation maintains our commitment to continuing to support the sustained growth of Thrive within the capacity that we have. And so that is the committee recommendation. I guess I'm speaking on behalf of the committee, so if committee members want to jump in.
Yeah, just to reiterate that, we as a committee had good conversations about those kinds of check-ins and wanting to provide just support and conversation and create community with our artists. And so that's a policy goal, and then that requires these check-ins, and so that requires capacity. And then you also mentioned the audit. We are trying to, of course, we want to really be attentive to that. And so this 60-40, if I can just speak, and please, committee members, speak up if I'm misspeaking, but my sense is that our conversations around that were around maintaining the status quo in terms of that, of the allocations, and considering our ability to support what we as a commission have asked the staff to do. So those were some of our discussions on the committee. Are there other, and please. So this is a recommendation that could be made for a motion for the allocation that is suggested by the grants committee.
So the motion is a motion to allocate 60% of the fiscal year 26 grant budget to general operating support grants and 40% to Thrive grants. Next slide, please. Oh, back up. Sorry. Is there any further discussion or questions before we call for a motion? Okay. I can take a motion.
Make a motion? I make a motion to allocate 60% of the FY26 grant budget to general operating support grants and 40% to the Thrive grants.
Thank you, Commissioner Khalil. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Jester. All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, that brings us on, the agenda, the next action item, which would be Thrive grantee recommendations. So here on the next slide, I just have a couple slides about how we have come to the recommended grantees, the recommendations. So we had 275 applications. We discussed that at the last commission meeting. From that, we had 57 that were denied in tech review, so did not meet the eligibility of the guidelines and the criteria. I've included in your packet a list of the denied applications, and it indicates if they were denied in tech or denied at panel. So we had 57 denials happen in tech review. We had 41 applications that we allowed a correction for. You may remember that we instituted a correction policy in the guidelines, and I just want to be very clear about how that worked. All of the corrections were sort of errors that could be the background check form was not signed, or the fiscal sponsorship letter was not signed, or a tax EIN letter was uploaded instead of a 501c3 determination letter. And so the corrections were all done through staff actions. A very hard line that we had was that applications were not reopened for anybody to make a correction. So corrections were not for substantive changes to your application. The applications never reopened after the deadline. It was more for these wrong document, missing signature kind of things. In the grant committee, in the last cycle, we did a breakdown of talking about the denials and what those data look like. So we will do that again at grants committee after we have gotten past this here. So after those tech denials, brings 218 applications that were panel reviewed, and from that, 86, the top scoring 86 applications are those that are recommended for funding. And that is just based on ranking it highest scoring to lowest scoring and totaling it up until we reach that 40% of the budget. And so that is how we came to the 86. You heard one of our panelists, our Thrive panelists, speak about that. And so We'll do more debriefing about the panel process and everything. Again, those conversations are in the grants committee. So that's how we got here to the 86. And so if you go to the next slide, that brings us to the recommendation that we have. The grants committee recommends the approval of those Thrive grantees as listed. And let me just talk a little bit about procedure and then, or what questions do you have before I talk about procedure? Questions and discussion.
Do applicants who have been denied ever get feedback? Do they ever get a response to what about their application was responded to in a critical way?
Yes. So formal notices will be sent after decisions are finalized. If that is today, we're prepared to begin doing those this afternoon, likely through the end of the day tomorrow. So the notice will inform applicants that if they would like more information, maybe to see their scoring, the exports from Submittable, they can request that. We'll say that we can produce or return that probably within 5 business days, just thinking about the number of the people that might request it. And so that is always available. It says that in the guidelines as well, that applicants can request that information. That would include the actual scores and any comments that the panelists left. So yes.
I know we just reviewed the comparison of overall budget this cycle versus last cycle for Thrive, and we all obviously just voted to keep the distribution between operations and Thrive together. I'm curious though about we talked about overall increase in applicants for Thrive specifically. How do these numbers compare to last year in terms of numbers of overall applicants and number of applicants approved for funding?
Yes. So last year was the year that. Oh, sorry. Last year we had last year I will say is not the most representative, but I will give the comparison. So we had the 201 applications that were submitted in January of 2024, and those applications remained untouched until January 2025, so a year passed. And of all the applications that indicated that they were still interested in being funded, because these were project grants, and so some things were no longer relevant, or applications that did not update to meet the new criteria. We funded 75 last year. So last year, everybody that met the criteria was funded. So 201 down to 75, and one could say that that was funding 100% of those that passed tech review. So this year we have the 275, and the recommendation is 86 funded. So it is 11 additional or 11 more projects that we are funding this year. And so that's a more modest growth that I feel we can handle capacity-wise. But
yeah, that's helpful because it's still growth, because the only outstanding question in my mind from the last item conversation is I'm not sure that, although I understand it, internal workforce effectiveness is enough grounds to continue and maintain budget allocation if the demand is higher to meet the needs of artists. But it sounds like that wasn't the case here, because we're actually funding more even though we're keeping the allocation the same. So I just want to draw out that difference in terms of, yes, we know where we are, but as we move forward, I'm just keeping that in mind. Thank you.
I will say too, just a reminder about the, we did as a commission, a committee and a commission also approve a slight change to the rubric for Thrive, which added more points to it, right? And added 2 questions to the rubric, and just to give the panelists more information. That was fairly easy. That was one of those kind of easy policy things that we could do as a committee and a commission, and we approved that. And so they were working under some additional, they had some additional information this year too, which I'm glad they had that because they were of the increase in the number of applicants. So
you may not have this information right now, and I don't know how pertinent it is at this exact moment, but I would love to know the full degree difference between total amounts requested and what we're actually funding. Because as we've discussed before, part of our job, I think, is to advocate for more arts funding. And so having that information, not necessarily right now, but at some point would be crucial to doing that.
Yep, it's very easy for me to provide, and it's based on, it's easy for me to provide. Yeah, I can do that. Yeah.
When are applicants informed of the approval or denial?
So we will start sending notifications likely this afternoon for whatever is approved. Just to talk through that, notifications are sent through Submittable, so where they applied, which is where all the communication has been contained so far. Fiscal sponsors will be notified via a direct email as well, since some of them might not have access to the applicant's actual submittable application. There's some information that we have to request from grantees at that time. We need a finalized budget on a very specific form, and we need them to confirm that they're accepting the grant. And so we're putting a deadline of October the 10th on that, and then after October the 10th, we will start running contracts. And then based on how quickly contracts are signed, we'll send for payment following that. So we'll likely start sending that today, likely through the end of tomorrow. We have to do it each one by one with entering all the specific information. So, yeah, does that answer the question?
Yep. Thank you.
A question. I know that we all approved the criteria for both Thrive and operating, but could we have just a little bit of a refresher of, for Thrive, what are allowable expenses and funding and what are not? Could we just kind of go through that for a second?
Yes. So for Thrive, it's really project and program funding. So it could be artist fees, artistic fees. It could be administrative fees as well if there's, a project coordinator. There's a lot of expenses that we see kind of categorized in community engagement expenses, event meeting expenses, stipends for community members to participate in things, promotional kind of costs, supplies, and so really project-based. There's a list of things that are not allowable. That's standard. You cannot purchase property. You can't use a grant to reduce debts. You cannot use a Thrive grant for general operations of an organization. So, rent on a building location or staff salaries of an organization. So does that answer the question? I could pull up the specific guidelines for more detail. If
No, we have them. I just wanted to make sure that we were all discussing the same thing. And as we look at the denials into the tech, and I do want to thank you and the staff for implementing the curing period or the correction period. That's a new piece for this year. So there were 3 open days, not where the application would be open for any content changes, but as Ashley said, if there were things that there wasn't a signature or something like that, then that was the opportunity. So I want to thank you for implementing that because that gave more buffer to the applicants to make any changes that were not content-based.
I will say too that curing period or buffer period was a direct result of, our things that happened this year. It was something that was easy for us to implement, and it was in response to some of the challenges we had the last cycle that would have addressed that, right? And so that was why that was implemented, and I thank you again for that. Oh, I was going to ask for clarification. Is there a limit to the number of projects for grants that an organization can be representative of, or it's just how many of our projects that come out of that same organization?
So for fiscal sponsorship, there's not,
Okay.
and an organization can apply if they meet the criteria. Organization cannot apply for both operating and Thrive. And a fiscal sponsor can sponsor individual artists, but it's not to support work of the organization.
If the artist's work in some way does directly affect the fiscal sponsor, is that a concern? How do we assess that? How do we judge that?
So there were examples that we tech denied that were very explicit. This is a program of X organization, where those organizations were receiving their own grant. Part of the challenge, I think, especially when we're talking about lots of our small organizations, is that the work is very collaborative, right? And so I think we determined that there's a difference of partnering with organizations, but if it's an independent artist-led initiative, that is because it is the artist's initiative and it's not programming of the organization, but there's a partnership, we know that that is how so much of this work happens. It's definitely an area that, as I review applications of the last 3 years, just looking at it, like the growth of Thrive, we've seen this across the 3 years. And so part of how I've come to understand it is really just the collaborative nature of a lot of this work and how artist teams come together and how partnerships between organizations and artists come together. And so we looked at it all case by case, application by application. And there's lots of conversations that we had on the front end with applicants as well. And there's probably improvements we can make in the specific questions that we ask on the application next time as well. And so that's something we'll be talking about also.
Are we going one by one or in a totality?
I've got a slide on process if we feel like we want to talk about process here. Okay. So what you have and how we'll move through this is you have the landscape orientation list of those 86 top scoring Thrive applications. What I've done, so you have the list. I will identify the applicants that need a separate vote due to conflict of interest. My copy here, I've indicated those. We will take those up one by one. And so if you have a conflict, you will abstain at that time, and then we'll call for a motion and approve that individual one, go to the next one for an individual vote. And then with the remaining applications that nobody has a conflict for, we can take them up as like we would a consent item, a group vote. And so I have, there's quite a few of the Thrive projects that we need to take up for an individual vote, probably about 20 or so. And so if we are ready to do that, I can call out the first one and we can see the process, and then we'll get into it once we start going.
And I guess my last question, we're not addressing any public comment, but how are we addressing like denials or things like that?
Yeah, so everybody will receive a notification of approved or denied, and at that time it will say if you would like your scores and the comments from the reviewers, we can absolutely give those, and we're accessible for conversations as well.
Hey, I guess in the reviewing process, the panelists are not required to leave comments. Is that correct?
They are not required, and so it will vary by panelists.
I would just suggest that we do require that. I've done a few of these, and it sucks sometimes. Like I'm like, I gotta write this, but I do think it's helpful when we find ourselves at this stage where people really want to know. And looking at the score number, it can only say so much if we don't provide comments. And so they can understand not just what that person scored, but what they were thinking. So I know it's kind of too late for this cycle, but I think we should definitely require that, especially when we're paying panelists to come in and make these decisions. So based off of Evan calling that out, I wanted to say that then.
I will say too, that is in our parking lot of ideas for next year. I've been looking at models and collecting models. It's also difficult sometimes, especially for community panelists, to know how to write a good comment, and to, think about what constitutes that helpful critique. And so I've been gathering some things around that for our committee to look at for next time as well.
Yeah, I'd like to second that and also add that it also takes the weight off of the organization to provide rationale, because the organization is not providing they're not on the panel doing the judging. And so it alleviates some of the cross-referencing of like some of the reasons that come through that are assumed when it's like, well, no, actually Metro Arts isn't making these determinations. So I think absolutely, with regards to training the panel, like whatever it takes to say, hey, this is how this is done, this is the expectation of you. And yes, also, it's not just metrics, but we need your qualitative rationale. Yeah.
Yeah, I think even what Devin was saying in his presentation was right on time for that. So maybe we bring Devin back. I don't know. Well, oh yeah. Thanks. Yeah. Sorry. Thank you.
One last question before we get into reporting requirements will be communicated with their contracts. So I'm thinking with the contracts, they know what to be tracking for reporting on Thrive, or am I overthinking that?
We are working to get the reporting finalized. It's not finalized as of today, but we're going to try to get it as soon as possible.
My last question. Last year, I remember we had some people come in, objections, and then we made a motion or whatever to approve them or deny them last year, an appeal. That happens in this process? No. Sorry, I may have missed that. I apologize. Yeah.
There is not an appeal process
Gotcha.
this year, aside from the standard action that anybody can take regarding any decision of a boarding commission to appeal that through the formal process.
Gotcha.
If the appeal that I read at the beginning of every meeting, that would pertain to this with as would anything, not the appeal process of last year.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Last call for questions on Thrive. Okay.
Not a question, just a statement. In my recusals on Monday, I left one out. And I will recuse today on that one. Nope, you were not. You, Evan, unfortunate.
If it's not one that I have identified, just let me know at the end before we go to the group. Okay, so the way that this will go is that I will, this is our practice one. So the first Thrive recommendation that we will take for an individual vote is number 1. And I will just read, can you go to the next slide? I will be saying it's a, Project 1 from the applicant Andres Bustamante with the fiscal sponsor Adventura Community School is recommended for funding. Are there any abstentions?
Commissioner Wade, I will abstain.
Commissioner Brown, I'll abstain as well.
If there are no other abstentions, then somebody can make a motion using the sequence here.
I move we approve funding for Andres Bustamante, fiscal sponsor of Ventura Community School, for Thrive funding.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Do we need to do it?
Or do we need? Macy, do you prefer us to do individual votes, or are you okay with us doing one solid answer?
One solid.
Great, thank you.
So the next application that I have for individual approval is number 8 from the applicant Leah Langley McLean with the fiscal sponsor Arts and Business Council of Greater Nashville. Are there any abstentions? I know some of y'all marked this one.
Sorry, are you going to remind us of, or you?
Yeah, and also I made an error because I was looking at the fiscal sponsor, and because I'm on that board, I think I clicked yes for all of those.
That's correct. So
okay.
So
I
if
just want to clear.
we're looking at the applicant name, the organization name, or the fiscal sponsor. So anything that's in these 3 columns is appropriate to abstain for.
Yeah,
So
because
Commissioner
the
Cole will be-
sponsor is who we are entering into a contract with, and so that would be a conflict.
So Commissioner Cole abstaining.
Commissioner Harden abstain.
Okay, so I recommend Leah Langley McLean for Thrive funding with a fiscal sponsor of the Arts and Business Council of Greater Nashville.
Commissioner Jester seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes.
The next application is number 10.
The applicant is Martha Morales Perucher, and the fiscal sponsor is Actors Bridge Ensemble Theater of Nashville. Are there any abstentions?
I am abstaining. Commissioner Lefkowitz.
Commissioner Wade, abstain.
I, Commissioner Knight, move that we approve Martha Morales Perucher and Actors Bridge Ensemble Theater of Nashville fiscal sponsor for Thrive funding.
Commissioner Jester seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
The next application recommended for funding is number 12. The applicant is Allison Jimenez Brazil, and the fiscal sponsor is the Tennessee Performing Arts Center. Are there any abstentions?
I, Sean Knight, recuse myself.
Commissioner Wade, abstain.
So I, Commissioner Lefkowitz, recommend Allison Jimenez Brazil and for Thrive funding with the fiscal sponsor of Tennessee Performing Arts Center.
I, Commissioner Brown, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion approved.
Are there any on the first page that you have a conflict with that I have not called?
Commissioner Brown have conflict with number 7, Timothy Trina in North Nashville Arts College.
All right, any other abstentions on number 7?
I, Commissioner Knight, move we approve Thrive funding for Timothy Trina Hewell, North Nashville Arts Coalition fiscal sponsor.
Commissioner Cole, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
All right. The next that I have is number 18 from the applicant Christian Sinclair and the organization Sold Creative Collective. Are there any abstentions?
I, Commissioner Lefkowitz, recommend Christian Sinclair for Thrive funding through the organization Sold Creative Collective.
Commissioner Jester seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? Motion passes.
Our next recommendation is number 21 from the applicant Stephen Joel Watts with the fiscal sponsor Black Mental Health Village. Are there any abstentions?
I, Commissioner Brown, abstain.
I, Commissioner Knight, recommend Stephen Joel Watts, Black Mental Health Village fiscal sponsor for Thrive funding.
I second. Commissioner Lefkowitz.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
The next recommendation is number 24 from the applicant Shauna Clay and the fiscal sponsor Corner to Corner. Any abstentions?
Commissioner Wade, abstain.
I, Commissioner Lefkowitz, recommend Shauna Clay for Thrive funding with fiscal sponsor Corner to Corner.
Commissioner Jester seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
The next recommendation is number 26 from the applicant Joseph Gutierrez and the organization API Middle Tennessee. Are there any abstentions?
Commissioner Wade, abstain.
I, Commissioner Knight, recommend funding for Joseph Gutierrez, organization API Middle Tennessee for Thrive funding.
Commissioner
Harden.
Brown, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any opposed? Motion passes.
Next recommendation is number 30 from the applicant Jess Williams and the organization The Equity Alliance. Are there any abstentions?
I, Commissioner Brown, abstain.
I, Commissioner Lefkowitz, abstain.
Commissioner Wade, abstain.
Commissioner Cole, abstain.
I, Commissioner Knight, recommend we approve funding for Jess Williams, organization The Equity Alliance.
Commissioner Harden, seconds.
I have a legal question. For after we have abstentions, what is the quorum for?
It
We're
shouldn't
good?
impact quorum. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Just making sure. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Are there any on page 2 that I've not named that need individual? Okay. What you got, Commissioner?
I, Commissioner Brown, number 36, Friends of Edmondson Home Site Park and Gardens.
And Commissioner Wade, number 33, National International Center for Empowerment.
All right, let's do number 33. So this is a recommendation for applicant Dr. Gutlak Thach from the organization Nashville International Center for Empowerment. Abstention, Commissioner Wade.
I move we approve Thrive funding for Dr. Gutlak Thach, organization Nashville International Center for Empowerment.
Commissioner Jester seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
All right, number 36 from the applicant Mark Schlicker with fiscal sponsor Friends of the William Edmondson Homesite Park and Gardens. Abstentions.
Commissioner Brown abstain.
I, Commissioner Knight, recommend we approve Thrive funding for Mark Schlicker, fiscal sponsor Friends of the William Edmondson Homesite Park and Gardens.
Commissioner Jester seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
I have number 35 as well.
There you go. Okay.
From the applicant Todd Lawrence from the organization Urban Green Lab. Any abstentions?
Commissioner Brown abstain.
I, Commissioner Lefkowitz, recommend funding for Todd Lawrence for Thrive funding for the organization Urban Green Lab.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Next up, we have number 38 from the applicant Randy Taylor and the fiscal sponsor North Nashville Arts Coalition. Any abstentions?
Commissioner Brown abstain.
I, Commissioner Knight, move to approve funding for Randy Taylor, fiscal sponsor North Nashville Arts Coalition for Thrive funding.
Commissioner Jester seconds.
Thank you. Any, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Next recommendation is number 41 from the applicant Amanda N. Ewing with the fiscal sponsor Friends of the William Edmondson Homesite Park and Gardens. Any abstentions?
Commissioner Brown abstain.
I, Commissioner Knight, move we approve Amanda Ewing, fiscal sponsor Friends of the William Edmondson Homesite Park and Gardens for Thrive funding.
Commissioner Jester seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
My next recommendation is number 48 from the applicant Urihi Naimor from the fiscal sponsor North Nashville Arts Coalition. Any abstentions?
Commissioner Brown abstain.
I, Commissioner Knight, move to approve funding for Arihi Nyamor, North Nashville Arts Coalition fiscal sponsor for Thrive funding.
Commissioner Jester seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anyone opposed? Motion passes.
My next application for funding is number 54 from the applicant John Holmes with the fiscal sponsor Buchanan Arts. Are there any abstentions? Buchanan Arts or John Holmes? I might have missed that one. Let's keep going. Okay. Number 61 from the applicant Christina Odessa Thomas and the fiscal sponsor North Nashville Arts Coalition. Any abstentions?
Commissioner Brown.
I, Commissioner Knight, move to approve Christina Odessa Thomas, North Nashville Arts Coalition fiscal sponsor for Thrive funding.
Commissioner Jester seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Next on our list is number 62, Winship Boyd with the fiscal sponsor Arts and Business Council of Greater Nashville. Abstentions?
Aye, Commissioner Cole, abstain.
Commissioner Harden abstains.
Commissioner Brown abstain.
I, Commissioner Knight, recommend approving Winship Boyd, Arts and Business Council of Greater Nashville fiscal sponsor for Thrive funding.
Commissioner Jester seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion passes.
Next is number 64, the applicant Danielle Myers and the fiscal sponsor The Forge Nashville. Any abstentions?
I may have put her, but yeah, we can move on from that one. Sorry.
Number 68, the applicant Megan Hall with the fiscal sponsor North Nashville Arts Coalition. Abstentions.
Commissioner Brown. Abstain.
I, Commissioner Knight, move to approve Megan Hall, a North Nashville Arts Coalition fiscal sponsor for Thrive funding.
Commissioner Jester seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion passes.
Next is the 69 from the applicant Cy Clayton from the fiscal sponsor Coop. Any abstentions?
Commissioner Brown, abstention.
I, Commissioner Knight, move we approve Cy Clayton and Coop fiscal sponsor for Thrive funding.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes.
Next is number 72 from the applicant Kim Albritton with the fiscal sponsor Arts and Business Council of Greater Nashville. Abstentions.
Commissioner Cole, abstain.
Commissioner Harden, abstain.
Commissioner Brown, abstain.
I, Commissioner Knight, move to approve Kim Albritton and Arts and Business Council of Greater Nashville fiscal sponsor for Thrive funding.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion passes.
Next is number 73 from the applicant Cynthia Harris with the fiscal sponsor Actors Bridge Ensemble. Abstentions.
Commissioner Lefkowitz, abstain.
Commissioner Wade, abstain.
I, Commissioner Knight, move to approve Cynthia Harris, Actors Bridge Ensemble Theater of Nashville fiscal sponsor for Thrive funding.
Commissioner Jester seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Next is number 75, the applicant Courtney Adair Johnson and the fiscal sponsor North Nashville Arts Coalition. Abstentions.
Commissioner Brown, abstain.
I, Commissioner Knight, move to approve Courtney Adair Johnson, North Nashville Arts Coalition fiscal sponsor for Thrive funding.
Commissioner Jester seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Next is number 76 from the applicant Ruben Torres Rodriguez and the fiscal sponsor the Quiet Voice Fund. Any abstentions?
Commissioner Brown, abstain.
I, Commissioner Knight, move to approve Ruben Torres Rodriguez, the Quiet Voice Fund fiscal sponsor for Thrive funding.
Commissioner Jester seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion passes.
Next is number 77, the applicant Camila Sanders and the fiscal sponsor is the Forge. Any abstentions?
Commissioner Brown, abstain.
I, Commissioner Knight, move to approve Camilla Sanders, the Forge Nashville fiscal sponsor for Thrive funding.
Commissioner Jester seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Number 80, the applicant Richard Adet from the organization Germantown Historic Neighborhood Association. Any abstentions?
Commissioner Khalil.
I, Commissioner Knight, move to approve Richard Audette, Germantown Historic Neighborhood Association organization for Thrive funding.
Commissioner Jester seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Next is number 82 from the applicant Nina Adele from the fiscal sponsor The Porch. Any abstentions?
Commissioner Khalil.
I, Commissioner Knight, move to approve Nina Adele, the Porch fiscal sponsor for Thrive funding.
Commissioner Jester seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Next is number 85 from the applicant Sinceria Radford. Thank you. The organization Nia House Montessori School. Any abstentions?
Commissioner Brown.
Wade.
Sorry, Dr. Wade.
I, Commissioner Knight, move we approve Sonseria Radford, Nia House Montessori School organization for Thrive funding.
Commissioner Jester seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Next is number 86 from the applicant Maria de la Paz Sue Tejon with the fiscal sponsor Coop. Any abstentions?
Commissioner Brown, abstain.
I, Commissioner Knight, move to approve Maria de la Paz Sue Tejon and Coop fiscal sponsor for Thrive funding.
Commissioner Jesser seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Did I miss any that we need to take for individual votes?
Don't look at me.
Okay.
I have.
So the next step is to read through all of those that we did not individually approve. Does anybody want to do that?
Got it. I'm here for you.
Okay.
Love
Great.
it. Okay.
Thank you.
I, Commissioner Knight, move to approve the following applicants and organizations or fiscal sponsors for Thrive funding. Jessica Malone, Kindling Arts, fiscal sponsor. Dayona Fairbanks, Fellovision Foundation, fiscal sponsor. Dariah Brown, Gideon's Army, fiscal sponsor. Rashidat Fatuga, Gideon's Army Organization. Brenda Perez, Workers' Dignity Project Organization. Daniel Furbish, Oasis Center, Inc. Organization. Owen Woodard, the International Black Film Festival, fiscal sponsor. Simone McCord, Six Square Academy, fiscal sponsor. Mike Quinones, La Misión con Arte, fiscal sponsor. Sarah Attanen, Satellite Dance, Inc. Organization. Elena Anderson, North Nashville Arts Coalition, fiscal sponsor. Rue Blue, The Forge Nashville, fiscal sponsor. Ashley Smith, the Branch of Nashville Organization. Haley Maurer, Kindling Arts, fiscal sponsor. Soraya Charlton, The Forge Nashville, fiscal sponsor. Thalia Ewing, Excellence in Motion, fiscal sponsor. Kristen Riley, the Scarrett Bennett Center, fiscal sponsor. Ann Veal, the Estuary Inc., fiscal sponsor. Amy Watson, Helping Music Foundation, fiscal sponsor. Nezrin Simsek, Kurdish Culture and Music Association, fiscal sponsor. Rolanda Lister, Building Life Opportunities and Options for Mothers Organization. Melissa Cherry, Choosing Justice Initiative Organization. Acacia Barron, Turnip Green Creative Use, fiscal sponsor. Caleb Rogan, Rock Life Youth Organization. Andy Rudloff, The Forge Nashville, fiscal sponsor. Rachel Stewart, Buchanan Arts, fiscal sponsor. Lyle Oberman, Dance East Collective, fiscal sponsor. Greta McLean, Silent No Longer Tennessee Organization. Miriam Kratz, Dance East Collective, fiscal sponsor. Israel Garcia, La Misión con Arte, fiscal sponsor. Hannah Dorfman, Kindling Arts, fiscal sponsor. Lauren Zook, Friends Life Community Organization. Hannah McCarthy, New Dialect, fiscal sponsor. Jen Lin, Chinese Arts Alliance of Nashville, fiscal sponsor. Richard Rapani, Nashville Youth Jazz Ensemble Organization. Safiat Aminu, The Forge Nashville, fiscal sponsor. Daniel Holmes, Dark Matter Community Fund, Inc., fiscal sponsor. Diana Matthews, Mashup, fiscal sponsor. Leslie Townsend, The Forge Nashville, fiscal sponsor. Taylor Fair, Nashville Design Week, fiscal sponsor. Sarah Saturday, Kindling Arts, fiscal sponsor. Timber Chipke, Chatterbird, fiscal sponsor. Chris King, API Middle Tennessee, fiscal sponsor. Jack Stell, Kindling Arts, fiscal sponsor. Emily Allen, Healing in the Margins, fiscal sponsor. Jarrell Pearson, Helping Our Music Evolve, fiscal sponsor. Delaney Dobbs, Dance East Collective, fiscal sponsor. Delaney McKay House, Dance East Collective, fiscal sponsor. Chris Bandy, Daybreak Arts, fiscal sponsor. Jason Garriott, Music Neighbors Organization. Justin Merritt, International Black Film Festival, fiscal sponsor. Corey Roroya, Mash Up, fiscal sponsor. Marie Hindman, Nashville Bel Canto Foundation, fiscal sponsor. Crystal Noyes, Healing in the Margins, fiscal sponsor. With apologies for any pronunciations, were there any that I missed? Number 54, thank you. John Holmes, and the Buchanan Arts fiscal sponsor. And did I say Danielle Myers, fiscal sponsor number 64, The Forge Nashville? Okay.
Second. Oh,
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Who was
Oh,
the
Commissioner Cole, I'm sorry.
Commissioner Cole second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion approved.
I think we might have missed 63 because might have should have called it for an individual one and didn't.
Okay. 63. I move that we approve Alex Wong, Quiet Voice Organization for Thrive funding.
Commissioner Jester seconds.
Are there abstentions on this one?
Oh, yeah.
With the quiet voice or Alex Wong?
Should I rescind my second? There's no
Okay.
abstentions.
Did
All
we
right,
get it?
Commissioner Jester second.
No harm in double approving it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thanks.
All right. Those are our 86 Thrive grantees for FY26. And so, yes, we expect that we'll have those notifications out by the end of tomorrow, hopefully starting today, but by the end of tomorrow for sure. All right, that moves us into what's on our next slide here, general operating grants. So just to provide the numbers here, as I did for Thrive to start the conversation off, this is where we received 106 applications. There were 13 tech denials, and you have the list of the denials in your packet, which indicates if it was tech denied or panel denied. Our panel scored 93 applications, and from that comes 79 that received a score of the 70 or higher. It's on my next slide here. I'll just go over this descriptive information to begin the conversation, but this is a summary of the committee recommendation. You see the number of organizations by size category here on the screen. So it's the 8 micro organizations, 16 small, 26 medium, 21 mid-size. I believe it's 8 large. You see how that is distributed by the amount of the budget that was allocated by category. And then in the chart, what I've indicated here is a reminder on what the budget categories are for organizations. So micro 0 to 25,000, small 25,000 to 100, up through our large category of those organizations with a $3 million or higher budget. These are the same budget categories we've used for 3 cycles now. And then what I've shown in the last column is the award ranges, just as a summary. You see the micro organization awards range from $1,800 to just under $10,000, small from $6,700 to $21,000, medium $10,000 to $44,000, mid-size $31,000 to $40,000, and large awards from $27,000 to $46,000. If you go to the next slide, this is what a distribution of those award sizes look like. I know that the dots are kind of small, but this is the 79 grantees. The different lines are for the different categories. And so this just visually shows the spread of there. The biggest difference here, which is visible, a takeaway from this, is that we have really closed the gap between our smallest awards and our largest awards based on the ongoing conversations that this body and through our community conversations and other objectives have had a lot of conversation and policy objectives over the last few years. And so this just shows that that gap is very different than what it was before. And I provide additional numbers in the memo that I referenced at the beginning, but this just shows the overall summary of the grantees as recommended from the committee. And this is where we can have conversation now. So maybe I'll ask committee members to start the conversation or what questions people have.
one of the questions that has come up today in public comment and in multiple emails sent to the commission is the question of, rankings. And I pulled out my rankings from March, and I'm looking, for example, just at the mid-size. And almost all of these rankings, scores out of 100 are considerably higher in March of 2025 than they are here. Do you have any sense of what may have changed that?
So I can, I don't have a specific answer, but I can sort of speak to my assumptions. And I'll just sort of frame it as this is the third cycle that we've used this rubric and the application, right? It is 5 questions for micro, small, and medium organizations, and it's 7 questions for mid-sized and large organizations. When this was implemented the first time in FY24, that was the first time scores were assigned on this rubric. The scores from last year, if you recall, one of the details was that many organizations could elect to keep their score from the previous year, and more than half of them did. And so for some times it's the second time that we're applying this for some grantees, or the third time that we're applying this for some grantees. We use community panels. That's a very different process than using professional adjudicators. I know that some of you as commissioners probably have experience with a more, and if there's better words of calling it like a professional adjudicators, different, more accurate words that I can be using for that, please correct my language as well. So I think that that is one of the things, the nature of using community panelists, panelists of community members, of peers, that it's different people every time versus having a different way of doing the panels. So I've kind of named 2 things here, right? It's that this evaluation tool is new and not used more than 2 or 3 times so far, and it's different people that have used it each year now. And so that's the start to my answer to your question there. And overall, I think you are absolutely correct. The scores are a lot lower than they were in the last time, which would have been a mix of new scores from last year or scores from 2024. And so they're lower across the board. They're lower for small, micro, medium, large, and mid-sized organizations. And so what I've shown you is the process that we used based on the policy that was approved, the policy of having community panelists, the policy of using the same panelist application, and the policy of the 70%. So,
Can I,
yeah, go ahead.
Also, the policy of the timeline that we adopted is another policy that we adopted that, potentially could play into that too. I do see, speaking to those limitations in the memo and thinking about the simplified rubric, I think about, we teach, grading a lot of students and having a really specific rubric, and you have a lot of teaching assistants, right? It gives them a lot of data in more specific ways to think about scoring, and the scores tend to be more uniform. But when the rubric is smaller, there's not as many. There's more factors in play in between there, right? And you tend to have a wider variation. And so I think one thing, and Ashley pointed this out, but to think about, in the data, we were looking at kind of patterns of data and things like that. The scores were down across all categories. There were some notable, jumps, right? So there were some that we're larger, right? That gap than others. That is a limitation of the model and the rubric, which we hope to address next time. But the question for us now is the process itself, as we said, like holding these two things together, the process itself was, as we was aligned with the policy that we set, and it was all transparent and it was all, whatever, and the outcome is what we have in front of us. And then we can decide, right, as a commission, what we do with that. I will say the difference between this and Thrive, too, is the kind of pass-fail piece that we're using here in terms of the cutoff, right? So, and we did add a couple of questions, right, to the Thrive rubric, which I mentioned, which took it to more points. But that's a different kind of process of assessment. This is in that pass-fail model, 70, no funding, whatever. So that is something that we can talk about.
Is there any policy on how we prepare the panelists, or can you speak to like what is the prior training? Because while I understand the perspective might be we combat bias, which is anytime a human is present, bias is present, so it shows up. With having different community panelists every year, the fact that this is an operating grant, one would expect there are not grave differences in how organizations are operating year over year. Not obviously, we've had a lot of change the last 5 years, but generally speaking, so like I'm just curious about like how do we prep those different people every time?
Yeah, so there was a training and orientation, a required one. At that, we, talk about just high level. These are the grant programs, right? Thrive, operating. This is the one you're assigned to. We go over the rubric, and so for operating, this is what each question is. So like one of the questions is about risk taking, and so there's always question, what is risk taking, right? So we look at each question and sort of talk on the front end about what the question is asking before they're assigned the applications to review. We go over the general guidelines of what you are reviewing when you have an application is the information that's submitted on the application, right? The arts community, everyone is very connected and experiences a lot of the arts that are being evaluated, right? So we do talk about keeping your personal experiences out of what you're evaluating, keeping that out of the conversation as well, and really focusing on the content of the application. And then we talk about the process. So the process for the panel, which is modeled off of the NEA process that they use for panels. Every application moves very quickly. So there is a lead panelist that is responsible for introducing the application. Just, we're up to evaluate Ashley's organization. As a reminder, this is the organization that does this, that, whatever. Let's talk about it. There's a 3-minute discussion, and all the panelists have submitted their scores at that point as well on the submittable platform. Panelists are not able to see others' scores. You're only able to see your score. And at the end of the conversation, everybody can change their scores if they so wish. We come together at the end of the day and have a debrief, and when the panelists leave, their scores must be final. So that's sort of the prep and the process.
Is there any element of the panelists knowing like last year, like historical data on the organization? So like maybe last year's score was this, or any element of that
that's not included
for repeat?
Because it's really focused on
applicants.
the application that is submitted.
Okay.
Another thing that was mentioned earlier that used to be a part of operating grant panels, which and this has not happened for several years because of timeline, capacity, different things, but the opportunity to give organizations like a member representative from the organization a chance to address the panel, right? And there were, I mean, I can't speak to why that process was stopped, but that used to be something that happened that did not happen. So they submitted the application, and that was what the assessment was based on.
To piggyback on Commissioner Lefkowitz, I have been on the commission long enough to remember, and also as a grantee and as on all sides of the table, bringing in one person or two people from the organization to speak for, say, 3 minutes or answer questions from the panelists once it had gone through. So I'd like to put that forward in the parking lot for next year. I think this is a good time to put things in the parking lot for next year and just kind of echo that. And then secondly, maybe we could have a conversation for next year about the applications and if they are suiting the organization sizes in the right way to capture the information. I'm just curious how that plays in, and especially without having like an in-person or a WebEx kind of few-minute conversation, if the application represents this and there's questions, to have the organization, I'm speaking general operating only, to have that organization. But I want to reiterate the timeline that this commission approved. I don't see that there is a place for that in this very tight timeline, and want to really, again, thank the staff for organizing this, and Commissioner Lefkowitz and the committee as well as you have. And this is a time for parking lot questions, and also to recognize what we can do better in the future. But I just wanted to kind of put that out there, and then yes, maybe bringing in outside adjudicators as we have before with a community panelist to balance things out and to put that in our budget for next year, parking lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of us have learned a tremendous amount. I have since January, and I've been to panels before and spoke as a board member before. I remember years ago, and I mean, there is an awareness, right, of that parking lot and all of those things that are looming out there that, you know, I mean, truthfully keep me up at night in terms of ideas and how we can move forward. I think I want to, again, you know, holding these things together, but what Ashley said at the beginning about, y'all, we've been doing 3 grant cycles in 1 year, closing one out, doing an award, trying to get money out. And it is inevitable that there are going to be some challenges, I think, with that model and some concerns. And that's not about how it was implemented or designed or policy. It's about just those limitations. So the real question for me is, in this matter that I bring to you, is how we want to hold that as an acknowledgement of the limitations in process. Do we see things that concern us enough that, for example, we want to send this back to the grants committee to try and think about? Are there policy adjustments which we are able to make in terms of thinking about, for example, the scoring? I mean, if you want to think like we're the teachers here. So if we say 70 is passing, 70 is passing. We can say something else is passing. You know, we can say 60 is. That is within our purview here. We can also just accept, you know, the recommendations of the committee as is, and then we can talk, you know, as a grants committee about some of the things that kind of fell through, and are there actions that we can take this year and next year, right, to address that. So I don't want to muddle the issue, but I want to be clear. I also think this is important because of trust with our community, and we have tried to be very transparent. I want us to be really transparent as a grants committee and posting things. One of the things that happened to us Monday was in terms of like we weren't able to stream the meeting because of, technical challenges and because of the election, and it's all kinds of systems things. So I recognize that. But I want us to talk about this and just, consider all kinds of things, or just what is before us. So I'm open to any kind of discussion.
So I think this might be a parking lot.
Okay, Commissioner Cole, then Commissioner Harden, and then Commissioner Jester. Okay, go.
Sure, this might be a parking lot addition, but I do think the historical progress of art organizations is not captured in the rubric, which also lends itself to being in question when it comes to, well, last year we scored this, this year we scored that. So my question is, there's a specific question that asks about first-time applicants, which lends itself to an assumption that there would be a continuation of at least historical knowledge of what a repeating applicant has done in the past. In terms of score, in terms of impact, the whole thing. So if we're not equipping panelists with that historical data on what organizations have done that have applied before, I think that's a major gap in the process.
Thank you, Commissioner Cole. Commissioner Harden?
Yeah, I think something you said briefly, emphasis on outside adjudicators, I think it could be very helpful because our community, we know a lot of these organizations really well. I run a lot of public art processes, and it can be very challenging to deal with personal bias, especially when evaluating arts. A lot of times, sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally. I will, and this is just a personal example, I'll see, okay, you score artistic merit out of 5, and, you're looking at it, and someone gives them a 0, and you're sitting there like, I mean, it's not a 0, but like maybe it's not a 5, and getting to that like honest answer sometimes is hard when you already are familiar with the artist or the organization, or I'm just looking at the list. Say I go to one of these organizations a lot, like I like it. It's like it's inherent, and if you're in our community, it's likely that you're experiencing that. So I do think, and I've had experiences where I've like scored grants from Michigan and I knew nothing about these organizations. I'm having to read everything and like take it in based on what they prepared and what the work that they've done. And I just think that in the future that would be really helpful in just kind of eliminating bias. Like Brittany said, we can't get rid of it completely. Excuse me, Commissioner Cole. We can't get rid of it, but we can definitely help it a little bit. And I think that would be huge in helping, even if it's not all outside, but I definitely think we know enough people between all of us to put together a good recommendation list of people who can come in and do that. So that's my little parking lot piece.
Thank you, Commissioner Harden. Commissioner Jester.
Yeah, just one of the concerns that I've heard raised several times is about the use of 3 panelists per application and not more. And so I'm just wondering if we can talk about that and why there were only 3 panelists and not 4 or 5 or.
Yes. So a few things. One was, so we had 24 panelists, which based on when I look back at that, we had more panelists than we have in past years because of the volume, but it was fewer panelists on the panels because of the number of applications. And so it's partly just, we ran 6 panels across Thrive and Operating. So it was dividing our people across the panels. And then just honestly, it's what our software could handle as well, in terms of the contract that we have with our grants management system. Just to be very truthful, we did not have additional seats for additional panelists, and we are in the process of procuring our next submittable. So part of it was a technical constraint. Part of it was a just number of total panels that we needed for the high volume of applications, and that is how the number became what it is.
Hey, quick question on that. How long did they have to access to the materials? Because that's a lot too. I'm just curious.
Yes, the orientation was on September 2nd, and applications were assigned that evening. So the evening, that was a Tuesday. And the operating panel was on September 11th, a Friday. So from Tuesday through the following Friday.
I guess if in our normal grant cycle, there would be a few more weeks probably for them. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think on a calendar for the next cycle, we would have more time for the tech review process and more time for the panel review process. And so a full 2 weeks, if not a little 2.5 maybe. So it was just shy of 2 weeks this time.
I want to say too, as I came, and I know Commissioner Knight and Commissioner Cleo also came to view the process, and I mean, I thank the panelists, the community panelists, for their work. It was a lot to review and read, and I feel like they just acted in good faith and were excited to be there, and so these concerns kind of come looking at the data, but the process itself was very smooth, and the staff worked hard to make that so. So I just want to say that they read a lot, y'all, and I think there are things. It gave me a lot of ideas. I wrote down pages and pages and observing kind of for the parking lot, thinking about training, different things. But I had no huge concerns in those moments. But of course, I wasn't seeing the results and things like that. But it went very smoothly, and just as the staff worked really hard on that, I will say.
This may be part and parcel of considering what to do with these recommendations, and I don't know that we want to comment on specific organizations in here, but we did receive another email the commissioners did this morning questioning the arts mission of one of these, and I don't know what sorts of information we have about that. Is that something that the panelists consider? Is that something technical review considers?
That's in technical review.
Okay.
Just to remind the commission, two things. That, as Commissioner Lefkowitz said, the timeline was approved by this commission, so we knew what the timeline was going to be, and that we did just run, the staff, has run 3 cycles in 1 year. And so the fact that we have the ability to get this money out the door at this point while taking in all of this and not just shoving it away, but taking it in and actually making changes in the future. But having that capacity to do that is really important. And I just want to, again, thank the staff for everything they've done. And I also want to ask, it's 2:09. Do we have any hard outs that we're going to lose quorum? And I need to ask Metro Legal what your timeline is like too. So hard outs for commissioners, 2:30 Commissioner Wade. 2:30 legal. You're good. Any staff? Okay, so let's 2:30. That gives us 20 minutes to decide how we're going to move forward. And is that okay? Just want to kind of get a framework here for the timeline.
I do feel like I could put forward a few options for us to consider. Number one, adopting the recommendation of the committee, which is adopting the recommendation of the committee. Second, again, looking at some kind of policy change that maybe would account for maybe some of the time constraint kind of limits, like a corrective action that might kind of address some of those limits. We could take that up, or we could, we have voted on Thrive. We could push this back to our committee to look at in more detail and do some work on.
I move we push this back to the grants committee to look at and do some more work on, specifically in terms of comparing last year's higher rankings with this year's lower ones and seeing if we see any challenges there.
My only other observation.
We have a motion. We have a motion on the table from Commissioner Knight. I need a second in order to go into discussion.
I'll second.
Commissioner Jester seconds. Now we can have discussion. Commissioner Cole.
My only other thought, it's just an observation. I think that given the last few years, kind of bit of a roller coaster with the organization aside, I do think one thing that I'm not hearing that I think is a massive opportunity for Metro Arts is to think about this beyond the allocation of funding every year and really truly think about partnership. And the operational grants, I think, is a great opportunity to say how, as an organization, are we partnering with arts institutions year over year over year over year, which kind of gets back to the historical context piece, to really have a really clear story that is in alignment with the mission and vision of the organization. And I know that's not the layer of conversation here, but I think it is a piece that's missed in are we getting the money out? But I think you could capture it in ensuring that historical context of organizations that are applying every year is considered in the review process.
Thank you, Commissioner Cole.
Now, you're going to say, Lefkowitz, what are you doing? But I am in agreement with Commissioner Knight, although I'm supportive of lots of conversation around this if it helps. But I do think, we've been on a timeline and we've been trying to hold to that. And that I want to emphasize again, was based on community feedback and what we felt like the community wanted us to do, right? But there are lots of little things spinning out here that we can both hurry up and take our time, I think. And so if it would be helpful for us to go back, I think our committee has shown that I feel great about our committee and the conversations that we have. I feel like we could have a structured conversation about this and we could bring something back to the commission. And if this is the way that the commission decides to vote, I want to say again that this is not an indictment or failure of the process in any way or the policy, because I stand by it. But then I also say, let's take our time and slow down and also consider some of these outliers and some of these things that that have just emerged. So,
a couple of questions. In pushing this back to committee to review operating only, are we then also missing something relative to the number of denials relative to Thrive as well? And so if we believe that, again, having not looked at the rubrics recently, but if we believe that the rubric for operating and the scores based upon the information we've received in our letters bears reviewing, does then Thrive not also bear reviewing? And then second question, in pushing this back to committee, to what end? Do we really think we're going to, in reviewing scores from last year to this year, reseat panels, reconsider applications, et cetera? So I don't know if that's a question that gets answered after it's pushed back, but I am very interested to know that in the pushback, what is it that we think we're going to accomplish relative to this timeline, relative to potentially being in the same situation we were in last year? Enough unanswered questions for me to just raise those things.
I think they're very good questions. And I thought about, if I could speak to the Thrive, my concerns are more with kind of activity around the results from the operating and not Thrive. And that's for several reasons. Number one, the rubric was slightly different for Thrive. We made some adjustments that I think gave the panels more information. Number two, because they're project based, we can't do that kind of comparison because sometimes they might be like completely different projects, right? And so it's not apples to apples as much as it is with grants. So I don't know if that data would be helpful. The third thing is the rank scoring to me is such a different thing than the pass fail kind of model. So I have a lot of confidence in that decision, feel like super great about what we just did. We knew always that increasing the number of Thrive applicants would mean that Thrive applicants would be denied. And we talked about that and that would be hard and, you know, whatever. But in terms of the integrity of that process, just like the integrity of this process, I feel good about it. So that's some of the difference I see. And then to your second point, I thought about that. Like, what are we going to do? I think that what I could come as a chair and I, you know, huddle with Ashley to come up with a couple of ideas for discussion. We could submit, you know, ideas in advance, but have a couple of things to consider and talk through. And it could be that as a commission or as a committee, we'll look at it and decide, no, you know what, actually, this is good, and we'll bring it back, right? But it will just give us more time to look at some of this data, to take into account the feedback we've gotten. And so the point is, I do have some ideas about things we could do that would be one-time kind of fixes. And I think the whole process has given us so many ideas about, like Ashley has been thinking so strategically in terms of thinking about the process next year and what that could be based on this. So we are making data-driven decisions about the future, which I love. So I don't know if that helps Commissioner Wade, but those are my thoughts.
It does help. I just want us to think about potential Thrive applicants who were denied, who will hear and see that we are making some different decisions around operating and potentially will have some of the same questions. I think we had one in here earlier today. And so that historical context of someone having received those things before and not at all this year, I think we may have some, especially in the absence of another kind of appeals process.
Let's see who I've got. I see Commissioner Harden and then Commissioner Jester and then myself.
I guess firstly, I'm wondering if in the event that we proceed with this, do we go ahead and share scores as they are for everyone? I guess that's one question. I guess another comment I want to make is in a lot of these emails, we're being called out for cutting funding of organizations or defunding organizations. And just the dynamic of this, we have a list right here of recommendations for funding. When we do, in the event that we do change, you know, these numbers are going to change for a lot of these organizations. And it continues the perception that we are defunding them or cutting their funding. So I think it's important that we call out that language because it matters. I think for what we're getting in our emails and the feedback we're receiving, we understand there's returning grantees and historical allocations that people become dependent on. But it's just, you know, if I'm one of these organizations and then we come back and change the decision, the perception is that we are cutting their funding and we're defunding them. So it's a challenging place to be, but I just want to call that out, and especially for the people who are reaching out to us because, you know, but yeah. And I do think if we do defer this, we should let people know what their score is now and kind of share the feedback, you know, so it's there. But that's all.
Commissioner Jester.
I think we also need to consider the timeline effects of sending it back to committee and what that looks like in not being, it's going to bump out funding into the community and what that timeline looks like, because it feels like it could be pretty significant if we go back, make changes, and then go back to panels again. That's going to take a long time.
I don't think we're going back to panels this year. Is that, clear me up on that.
Well, then what?
We're not talking about we're not deciding, we're sending it back to committee to discuss our next steps, but we're not saying, we're
regardless, if we don't approve it today, funding will be coming later to people, right, for operating. But, yeah. Funding will be coming later.
It's not on.
Funding will be coming later to people, but yeah, that's a consideration.
Director Batchelder, since you and the team do this work, what would you feel is, I don't want to put you on the spot, and I know this is not your decision in terms of policy or anything else, but I want to be very, very conscious of what the staff load is like right now and what this looks like in terms of timeline and changing it around and what that does to you all.
We'll do whatever the commission asks us to do, of course. I think, yeah, I mean, our next 3 months, 4 months are focused on recruiting staff, onboarding staff, training staff, thinking about setting the next cycle up, and doing our strategic planning process that we as a body have talked about, which I have a brief update if we have time at the end of the meeting. And yeah, we do continue to have changes on our team. And so, yeah, I mean, we are prepared to, work on the timeline that I mentioned earlier in response to someone's question on this side around deadlines to accept the awards, looking at October 10th for that, doing contracting shortly to follow that. And that means payments and invoicing will be Thanksgiving time. And so that's just what I have planned right now mentally, of our priorities and focus on this and setting up our, grant check-in structure for beginning in the new year after that.
So I'm not sure that the remedy is sending this back to grants without clear specification on what the parameters are for what that means, similar to what Commissioner Wade said, because there are lots of variables here that are at play. I do think one thing that would be helpful, I know for me as a commissioner, I might be an N of one here, but I would say two things. Right now, the list we have is sorted by size. I would love to see this by first time versus repeat organization and the comparison of score and amount. So that is something that would be helpful to be able to see the data in that way. Because again, because this is an operating grant, I think that repeat year application historical information does matter, and it does not sound like it is adequately considered in the process. And so I think if anything is, quote, going back to committee, it could be an assessment of that. The other layer that I would add in here is with regards to trust building in general. It erodes trust quickly when every year there's a change to the rules. It's like, where's the goalpost? Because we keep moving it. So I think, some additional conversation would be needed if there is a decision to change the rules, which would mean that these outcomes would change. I think that's an additional conversation that's not just, in committee we decided to do this. And I'm not even sure that I would be comfortable recommending that given where we are. So I don't know if there were other ideas for what going back to committee means, but I'm not sure that going back to committee means changing what has been established for all the reasons mentioned.
My specific motion particularly indicated looking at the panelist responses and seeing if we could determine the significant difference between the scorings from last year and this year.
I think we should do that anyway. I think we should do that anyway. But I think the only way that this goes back to committee and ends up being fair is if we go all the way back through the entire process again. And I think anything else isn't just bad optics, it's just bad. And it gives the perception that we get results we don't want and we send it right back to committee. And I think that does what Commissioner Cole just said, is it tears down trust we're trying to build back even more. That's concerning.
Right, so if we had not received any emails, and it's 3, we wouldn't be having this discussion. What?
No.
We would be discussing it after the fact.
No, because I sent an email prior to receiving those emails asking a similar question.
I still don't see how it goes back to, then we start the whole thing over again. If you look at something, and this was the same thing in the appeals process last year, if you look at something for one person, if you make a modification for one person, that does not mean not looking at what was presented and how did things change. But by doing it this way, I think we've eroded trust in the system. And if we do this for 1 or 5, Thrive or operating, we've sort of shot ourselves in the foot, and we need to start from the beginning all over again. And that isn't beneficial. It isn't the feedback we got in terms of getting the money out. Sorry.
Thank you, Commissioner Cleo. Thank you, Commissioner Knight. Let's see.
And I will also say that we can have a discussion. We could approve this today, which I would support if this is the will of the commission, and have a conversation in our next grants committee, right? That could be productive. Let's call the question and vote on this motion, and then move from there. I didn't make it up.
Sean, can you?
I will do my best to restate the motion, which was something along the lines of I move to send the recommendations for operating grants back to committee to consider the significant difference in scores from last year to this year using the same rubric.
Thank you, Commissioner Knight. Do we have a second? We have a second. Okay, sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Do you want to do this by roll call? Or you?
That's up to you.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Let's do roll call. Vivian?
All right. Commissioner West,
Yes.
Commissioner Harden,
No.
Commissioner Lefkowitz, Commissioner Brown,
No.
Commissioner Cole,
No.
Commissioner Jester,
No.
Commissioner Khalil,
No.
Commissioner Knight,
Aye.
Commissioner Wade,
No.
seven to two.
7-2, the motion does not pass. So we will move forward with the original motion. Or, sorry.
No other motions have been made
There's
yet.
no other
It would
motions
now be
made.
time to vote
Okay.
on them.
Yep. So that motion does not pass. Moving forward into our recommendations for funding as is.
And do we have time to do that?
do we
Or
have
when
time
we
to do
lose
that?
these folks, are we no longer at quorum?
Yeah, so if you're going to lose quorum, you can't move forward with another motion. And so we can reconvene at another meeting in the future. But obviously,
Unless you have to leave. We'll have 6.
you'll have 6?
Yes.
Okay. So if you won't lose quorum, you can keep the conversation going.
Thank you. Otherwise, we just need to call a special meeting if we lost quorum.
Only too early.
Yeah, I was gonna say let's have like a 2-minute, 3-minute break. Is that what you said? Oh. Oh, yep. Wait, I'm sorry.
I don't think, are we taking a break? What are y'all doing? What's happening? I'm confused. Are we taking a,
We are reconvening at 2:41 p.m. We do have a quorum, and so we are going to continue with our agenda for the operating recommendations for funding.
Right, just to check in, I can set us up if the likely recommendation is coming to be looking at what we're looking at here, the recommendations from the committee. If there's any other, okay.
Are you asking if there's any other discussion?
If there's any other motions that people are thinking about, just since we've had that whole discussion, or we're okay.
Okay, moving forward.
We're going to go to the motion.
We'll start with identifying the ones that are
Conflicts of interest.
Great.
Yeah, so in your packet, you're looking at the list. You probably know. You're probably already looking at it. It starts with the large organizations at the top, so we'll go through the size category, and I have highlighted on my own version here the ones that will take up for individual votes, and so we'll go through the same process. I think it'll go a little faster for this one, but the first organization in the large category that is recommended for funding is the National Museum of African American Music. Are there any abstentions here?
Cole.
Commissioner Cole, an abstention.
Yes.
Sorry. I, Commissioner Knight, recommend to approve general operating support funding for the National Museum of African American Music.
Commissioner Jester seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion approved.
Okay. The next organization is Belcourt Theater, Inc. Is there any abstentions here?
Commissioner Lefkowitz.
I, Commissioner Knight, make a motion to approve funding for Belcourt Theater for general operating support funding.
Commissioner Jester seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Right. The next organization is the Nashville Ballet. Are there any abstentions? We've also had a couple commissioners left who identified here. Okay. Frist Art Museum. Any abstentions?
Commissioner Khalil.
Commissioner Lefkowitz.
I, Commissioner Knight, move to approve Frist Art Museum for general operating support funding.
Commissioner Jester seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
The next organization is the Tennessee Performing Arts Center.
I, Commissioner Knight, abstain.
I, Commissioner Lefkowitz, move to approve funding for the Tennessee Performing Arts Center.
I, Commissioner. Oh, you got it.
Seconded by Commissioner Harden.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Are there any organizations in the large category that we need to take individually that I missed? Okay. Yes. You abstained. Okay. I'll read out those remaining ones. The Country Music Foundation, Inc., Nashville Symphony Association, Nashville Opera, Nashville Ballet are our remaining ones to take.
Do we want to go ahead and make a motion on the size as we go? Okay. I make a motion to approve those organizations as named. Again, Country Music Foundation, Inc., Nashville Symphony Association, Nashville Opera, Nashville Ballet for general operating support funding.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, that completes our large category. Next in the mid-size category, I've marked a handful here. So Tennessee Association of Craft Artists, DBA Tennessee Craft. Any abstentions? I think that was a different commissioner. Okay. Arts and Business Council of Greater Nashville. Abstentions.
Commissioner Harden.
Commissioner Cole.
I, Commissioner Knight, move that Arts and Business Council of Greater Nashville receive general operating support funding.
Commissioner Jester seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Okay. Next is the Porch Writers Collective. Any abstentions?
Commissioner Khalil abstains.
I, Commissioner Knight, move we approve the Porch Writers Collective for general operating support funding.
Commissioner Jester seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Nashville Repertory Theater, Inc. Abstentions.
I recuse myself. Abstain. Commissioner Knight, sorry.
I, Commissioner Lefkowitz, recommend funding for the Nashville Repertory Theater Incorporated operating support.
Commissioner Jester seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Next is the contributor. Any abstentions?
Commissioner Lefkowitz abstains.
I, Commissioner Knight, move to approve the Contributor Inc. for general operating support funding.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Nashville Children's Theater. We have
I,
abstentions.
Commissioner Knight, abstain.
I, Commissioner Lefkowitz, recommend approval for generating operating support for Nashville Children's Theater.
Commissioner
Second.
Jester seconds.
Commissioner Jester seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Are there any in the mid-size category that we need to take for individual that I missed?
Commissioner Jester.
Okay.
I, Commissioner Knight, move to approve Southern Word, Creative Vets, Musicians on Call, W.O. Smith Nashville Community Music School, Music City Youth in the Arts, Inc., Tennessee Association of Craft Artists, DBA Tennessee Craft, Turnip Green Creative Reuse, Native American Indian Association of Tennessee, Nashville Jazz Workshop, Nashville Film Festival, Jazz Empowers, The Forge Nashville, Tennessee Arts Academy Foundation, Music for Seniors, Humanities Tennessee, and the Theater Bug for general operating support funding.
Commissioner Jester seconds.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Okay. We are on to the medium size category. Individual votes here include North Nashville Arts Coalition. We can include that one. Buchanan Arts. I think those are all. Actors Bridge. Any abstentions?
Commissioner Lefkowitz abstains.
I, Commissioner Knight, move to approve Actors Bridge Ensemble for general operating support funding.
Commissioner Jester seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Creative Girls Rock. Do we have abstentions?
I, Commissioner Harden, abstain.
I, Commissioner Knight, move to approve funding for Creative Girls Rock for general operating support funding.
Commissioner Jester seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Arcade Arts Nashville. Do we have abstentions here?
I, Commissioner West, must abstain from this vote.
I, Commissioner Knight, move to approve Arcade Arts Nashville for general operating support funding.
Commissioner Jester seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Are there any medium ones that we need to pull out that I've not called?
I, Commissioner Knight, move we approve Youth Empowerment through Arts and Humanities, Kindling Arts, Girls Right Nashville, Love Learning Music, Dance East Collective, North Nashville Arts Coalition, Nashville Philharmonic Orchestra, The Beat of Life, Buchanan Arts, Rejoice School of Ballet, Intersection, Daybreak Arts, Healing Arts Project Inc. Happy, Move Inclusive Dance, Operation Song, Global Education Center, Street Theater Company, Nashville in Harmony, New Dialect, Dancing Through the Curriculum, Art and Soul Nashville Inc., The Arts at Center Street, and Senior Center for the Arts for general operating support funding.
Commissioner Jester seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
All right, we are on to the small category. I have 3 organizations here. Unscripted. Are there any abstentions?
Commissioner Lefkowitz abstains.
I, Commissioner Knight, move to approve Unscripted for general operating support funding.
Commissioner Jester seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Friends of the Edmondson Homesite Park and Gardens. Do we have any? I think, okay. And Coop. I might have. Okay. we can do the rest together.
Okay. I, Commissioner Knight, recommend that we make a motion to approve Excellence in Motion, Nashville African American Wind Symphony, Inc., International Black Film Festival, Fall, Carnegie Writers, Chinese Arts Alliance of Nashville, Vox Grade, Inc., Portara Ensemble, Friends of the Edmondson Homesite Park and Gardens, La Mission Con Arte, Coop, Nashville Filmmakers Guild, Defy Film Festival, Nashville Bel Canto Foundation, and Numinous Flux Dance Company for general operating support funding.
Commissioner Jester seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
I do not have any identified in the micro category. Are there any that need to be taken up?
I, Commissioner Knight, move we approve Music City Review, April Gloaming Publishing, Dark Matter Community Fund, Inc., the Enlightenment Film Academy, Sonos Choir, Nashville Dance Collective, Kurdish Culture and Music Association, Community Arts of Bellevue, DBA Arts Bellevue, for general operating support funding.
Commissioner Jester seconds.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion passes.
Do I have anything else on the slides for this section? Okay, one more slide. This is the distribution overall of our $3.2 million. You can look at the percentages there. I can provide a follow-up of compared to last year's data if that's of interest in our next meeting as well. And then if you go just to one more slide, this is just a different way to visualize the data, but shows where the distributions fall based on the award amount. So that is the summary of the data, and I believe that this is the last slide for committee reports that we are done.
Thank you, everyone. For my chair's report, and honestly, for time purposes, I don't have much of a chair's report. We did not have an executive committee meeting this month. We will reconvene this upcoming month, which will continue with the executive director search and the process around that. And outside of that, my chair's report is a great big thank you to everyone. Like the process worked. And we're putting things in a parking lot to move forward. And I just want to thank everybody for their time and attention to this, and to all the people that have applied. And now, the executive director's report.
Okay, I just have a few quick updates. Camille Greer has been confirmed as our newest commissioner. She had an existing conflict with today. She was just confirmed through the council last week, and so she will be here for our October body, full body meeting, commission meeting. I'll let her self-introduce her there. I know many of you may know Camille. So excited for Commissioner Greer to join us. That brings us to full commission, 11 members. Staffing updates. I have a staffing update every meeting, it seems. So Skylar Peterson, some of you may know, Skylar has been our finance and operations coordinator for 13 years. And so she's often behind the scenes, so many of you may not have met her, but she has moved on from Metro Arts. Her last day was this week, and so tremendous thank you for all of the contributions that she has made for over a decade for this agency, and a real thank you to her planning her transition and sticking it out once we've onboarded our other finance staff, and so it is a planned transition, and so very grateful for her for that and just all of her service, and wanted to just acknowledge all the work that she's done for 13 years of Metro Arts. On the hiring side, we are moving with 3 different positions right now. So we have a finance officer position. So we've changed the specific position a little bit with Skylar's transition, and that has closed, and Capri will be growing her team, which I know she is excited about, and we're all excited about. Super critical position for the whole operations of the department. So we hope to have that person well, we haven't even started interviews yet, but we are reviewing the applications that came in. They closed last week. And so we hope to have a person in place in the next couple of months. And then things I would love your all help spreading the word. Our public art manager and our grants and strategic initiatives manager. These are both leadership positions within the agency. The strategic grants and initiative manager will oversee the whole grant process and provide staff support for our other community funding programs as well, in addition to just the grant cycle. And the public art manager will be the lead for our public art program, Percent for the Arts program. And so I'll follow up with the direct links to those. Please share the word with any networks that you are a part of or any specific people that you think could help spread the post as well. They both close on October the 8th. And so I look forward to growing our team with some great people. And just last update, we are beginning to move forward on putting together a plan for our sort of strategic visioning and planning process that we've talked about to take place over a 60 to 90 day period with the grant cycle. We just did not have the bandwidth to put the planning and time there. And so now that we are where we are, we'll have more updates to share soon, but are close to identifying the facilitator that we will work with. So those are my director's report. Always happy to answer any questions or.
Did you, the grants position and the public art, they're open now?
Yes. Yep. You can find them on, if you, Nashville.gov. You'll find them there. Search Arts Commission.
And thank you, Darius, for the social media, getting it all out. I'm seeing it, and I've actually gotten a couple of just messages about they saw it there and they're looking to apply. So thank you. And we can all share it within our networks and all that good stuff.
Given the timeline for the executive director search, I guess have you all thought about connecting that with the timeline for the strategic planning so that person is in place to contribute?
We don't have an exact timeline for the director search, and we're really thinking about the planning as sort of alignment of where we are right now, so that when we begin the search, we are aligned as a body, the staff is aligned with the commission, and we have a way that we talk about our work that is a shared understanding and accurate, so that we set up expectations clearly for whoever the next permanent director will be. So we're kind of entering it as a precursor to the director search, but as those necessary steps to do the director search well.
So it sounds more like, I mean, words matter, but it sounds more like operational planning versus strategic planning. So it's not like where we'll be in 5 years, 3 to 5 years. It's more like day to day.
And it's more like a process that we could do side by side and get some benefit from that would help make our search better too. Yeah.
Thank you. Ashley, anything else? Anyone else? Look at all the faces. Okay. Anything for new and old business, which would be for our agenda for the next meeting? Okay. With that, I make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. Oh, when is our next meeting?
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation
October the
again,
23rd
or for
is our
more
next
information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.